leap from the silence into sound, and poetry becomes a living, breathing force. I am Tamarah Roc, broadcasting from the enchanting shores of Bainbridge Island, where ocean tides compose symphonies and ancient cedars stretch stories across the sky. During daylight hours, my husband Ben and I nurture Bainbridge Island Press. It is a sanctuary for wordsmiths brave enough to crack open their souls and share the fire burning within. But here's what we've discovered. Witnessing these creations in print tells only part of the tale. Poetry demands liberation through the human instrument, complete with trembles, thunders, and unfiltered truth. This is poetics at its core. Every episode grants you an intimate access to poetry from every corner of our publishing. We will uncover verse transformed by a single powerful quatrain or a strategic pause, because exceptional poetry doesn't merely speak to you, it transforms you from within. We'll venture into the peculiar, the magnificent, the absurd, the soul-crushing. Today, we're exploring joy. So, whether you're an academic scholar or someone whose last poetic encounter was in a hidden notebook, consider this your golden ticket to the most electrifying literary gathering imaginable. So, grab your favorite drink, find your comfy spot, and tune those ears to maximum reception. It is time to discover how ancient this art form is, and yet how explosively perfectly now it can be. Welcome to POETICS Podcast. So today I'm going to do something a little different, because usually I go over one poem and we explore that one poem from one poet. And today I'm going to do a couple, because we are exploring The Dance of the Emu. It is a chapbook that we published. It's on our Express Digital Chapbooks. It's by Paul Engel. This was such an interesting chapbook to read, and I sat on this for a while because it's different, and I like different things. I don't know if that comes across. I like things that expand how you see things, expand what you know, but also I like things that reach back into places that we remember. And poetry needs to be an exercise of memory. And that's what I felt this was. I liked this book and I published it because every single time I read it, I was happy. Every single time I read through the poetry, I felt better. I felt joy. There was a beautiful nostalgia of innocence and beauty. That's why I liked it. I want to be very clear, this is not a terribly complicated collection of poems, but they were beautifully written. There was an economy of language. There was a use of figurative language. It was saying something. It hit all the boxes to be beautiful, good, well-written poetry. But this is not academic poetry. There's been other poems that I've read and published, and I'm like, this is obviously someone that has gone through workshops and training and skill, and I can see everything that they've put into it. This was different. And so I just want to acknowledge that before we go on, because that was what I liked the most, is I couldn't stop thinking about these poems. They were so lovely, and they added beauty to the world. And I was so grateful that Bainbridge Island Press could share this beauty with the world. Now, I don't know if you grew up with hardbound books that you found at garage sales or in used bookstores, but I'm sure that there's a term for it. Okay, it looks like, I actually had to look it up because I don't know how to explain this, but it's the golden age of children's illustrated books, and it looks like the publishers were Rand McNally, McLaughlin, some others, and between the 1880s and 1950s, they were hardbound. They're for children. There's poetry and fables that were printed. Some of the artists were Jessie Wilcox Smith, Arthur Rackham, Edmund Dulac, and I loved them, and I'm sure that I still have them in my house. But those were books that I had in my house. We had other books too. We went to the library, and I was always raised with books. And anyways, those poems, nursery rhymes, even American fairy tales, we won't get into German fairy tales, that's another conversation. But those rhymes and those hearkening to the innocence of childhood is something that I really like. And so when I read this collection, or it was a chapbook that we published called Dance of the Emu, it had that tone. And even though I'm trying to justify this, but I'm just telling you, it's just a beautiful collection of poems, and they made me happy. And I can share these with my kids, and I can share them with my friends, and I think that you should read them too. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to read a few of them because they're short, and then we will do an analysis. But because they're a little bit short, I don't want to just do one. So overall, just with the chapbook, it's a nature-centered collection of poems. They move through seasonal cycles, pastoral scenes, and it has a distinctly American sensibility. Engel, the poet, is crafting these verses, and they personify natural forces, particularly the seasons, as mythic figures, while grounding them in accessible and colloquial language. This collection is, it has intimate fishing scenes. It has mysterious titles. The emu dance, I will get into that. I thought it was fun. It was just happy. But the work is balancing whimsical fantasy with deeply observed natural phenomena, and it's creating this bridge between the everyday and the eternal. So I was doing some analysis of this because that's what I do. So three main themes in this would be seasonal personification in natural cycles, solitude and contemplation in natural settings, and the mystical and transformative power of nature. Now, from a historical standpoint, it's interesting because Engel is really placing him within the American pastoral, but he's reaching back to the traditions of Romantic poets, which are primarily English, or at least British. Wordsworth and Tennyson. There's some others, but I don't want to get into that because that's a rabbit trail. This collection also echoes the accessibility of rural scenes similar to Robert Frost, but then he's incorporating mythic sensibility found in writers like Robinson Jeffers. The poems, I think, are reflecting this longing for connection with natural cycles. It's written from the perspective that assumes that nature is a refuge rather than a frontier to be conquered. This is the position of the work within the late 20th century or early 21st century for environmental consciousness. These are not environmental poems, but nature and environment is in it. I think that the nostalgia is so heartbreaking. It just makes me so happy. It's longing for something simple, for a simpler time, for more connected ways of being. There's a poem in here called Until Forever, and it voices this desire to make summer last until the end of never. It's so beautiful. I think that agricultural imagery in one of the poems called The Windrows, it references cottage life with honey gathering and jasmine growing. And I think that yearning is coming back. There are plenty of people who, right now, who have Instagram feeds or TikTok or Twitter, it's social media, that allow people to an insight into their homestead. There are families who are showing this is our beekeeping. There are people who, I have an Instagram for our ducks. It's social media is sure it can be dangerous. And that's understandable. But at the same time, it's such a beautiful way for us to connect with each other and for us to live vicariously through all of these lives that are out there. Isn't that what literature does? Is it allows us to see the lives of other people in another time, in another land, with more cultures, in different environments, in different circumstances, so that we can understand ourselves better, so that we can understand our neighbors better. This is how we develop love and empathy, is by connecting with each other. So I think that those are lovely. There was a man who's a master thatcher in Britain, and he had videos of himself thatching roofs. I may have watched those way too much, but now I know a lot about thatching roofs. Anyways, these are just surprising elements that made me fall in love with these poems. Some of the things that I like, actually, let me just get into the poems. We will read the poems and then we'll talk a little bit more. Weeping Willow Cove. Let's row to Weeping Willow Cove, where golden weeping willows stand like golden waterfalls, and where bluegills grow as big as your hand. That's it. That's the poem. It's not a long poem, but it is a beautiful poem. And the reason why is because it reminds me of the beauty of the simplicity of William Carlos Williams. William Carlos Williams wrote The Red Wheelbarrow. He was early 20th century, and it's a very famous poem. If you don't know it, I will read it. It's that quick. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, glazed with rain, water, beside the white chickens. That's the poem. It's a very powerful poem, and I can say it's a controversial poem because of its simplicity. There was a period of time of imagists, and I mean, we really have to blame Ezra Pound for everything in the earliest 20th century, but it was the power of allowing observation to be the scene. This poem, The Red Wheelbarrow, is everything except what the eye sees. It just strips away everything. So the red wheelbarrow, the white chickens, the rainwater. Those are the objects in the poem. And Williams is showing us that poetry doesn't need grand subjects or complex metaphors. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to look closely at what's right in front of you and present it without explanation or interpretation. The audience is going to come with their own explanation and their own interpretation. They're coming with their own toolbox of experiences. So it can be argued that the poet needs to present the scene. There is a weight of so much depends. So the opening phrase of the Red Wheelbarrow, which is so hard to say twice, creates an enormous tension. So Williams is claiming in this poem that everything hinges on this simple scene, but he never tells us why, and he never tells us what depends on it. This forces the readers to consider what might be at stake instead. Perhaps the relationships between humans and their physical world. Perhaps it's the way that small moments of beauty sustain us. And that is what I liked about Weeping Willow Cove, is it is a small moment of beauty that sustains us. The first line is "Let's row." That's an action and it's an invitation. Let's row to Weeping Willow Cove. And then he tells us where it is, where golden weeping willows grow, or they stand like golden waterfalls, which is beautiful and inviting, and where bluegills grow as big as your hand. There is a history, I don't know, it's not a history, I don't know how many people go fishing anymore. I think that more do than I'm aware of, but it seems to have gone out of fashion somehow. All of my kids have gone fishing. I think fishing is important. We don't go fishing all the time though, but it is a place of solitude, and it is not complicated, and there is a peace in isolation. And I don't know, I think that we could talk about the magic of fishing, because it's not just catching a fish, because you're usually not going to catch a fish. I never catch a fish. But it is this, it's not a tradition. You either go alone or you go with someone, right? And if you go alone, that means something. And if you go with someone, it means something. It's intimate. You're in a boat together. It's an intimate setting. And in this poem, it's a friendly invitation. That's what I liked. And that actually, I'm going to stop the analysis now, because that's what I want it to be, is the simplicity of, it's an open, friendly invitation. It is the small moment of beauty that sustains us in this poem. That's why I liked it. Okay, we're going to do another one. Summer. Summer awoke slowly on a bed of clover, a dream-laden night, the moon her lover. Summer, barefoot beauty, wiggled her toes, watched the airy bestiary, distracted, reposed. Now, one of the things that Engel said in his cover letter was that he liked the use of language, and I can see that in his poetry. This is a loose rhyme scheme, but it has a lot of internal rhymes that mirror the unhurried quality of summer, or at least the way that summer used to be or should be. The lines vary in length, but it's a relaxed conversational flow that matches the poem's dreamy atmosphere. It forces us to experience the poem at summer's pace. I liked the personification of the mythology. Engel is transforming summer into this goddess figure, complete with a divine love affair, with the moon as her lover. There's a romantic mythology around this season's long moonlit nights. This personification elevates the natural world into something mythical and eternal. It suggests the seasonal changes are part of this ongoing cosmic romance. Summer becomes not just weather, but it is a living being with desires, and I like that she wiggles her toes. There's a lot of sensory imagery in here. There's wiggles her toes, there's barefoot beauty, there's the bed of clover, there's a contrast and paradox. The dream has a contradiction of intense activity alongside deep rest. Summer is simultaneously dream-laden and alert enough to watch the summer around her, but she's distracted and reposed. And that's such a lovely description of how summer afternoons can feel. And I liked the distracted and reposed. It allows you to not be working, I think. I think that it forces you to relax. And I think that that's why I liked these poems, is I just have a lot of energy. I have very, very slow marathon energy. And I just do. But this is a break. It is a little escape. And I feel happy when I read it because it is allowing me to relax. It is allowing me to be distracted. And I just feel happy when I read it. It's a little burst of joy. Okay, we're going to do one more. Which one am I going to do? Oh, this is no question. I liked the buck. The buck. Under the half glow of the half moon, the buck sleeps alone. He stops and smells, muscles twitching, the dough musky air, beguiling, bewitching. Under the half glow of the half moon, the buck sleeps alone. This one I liked because of its circular structure and its repetition. Again, it's not a very long poem. It opens and closes with identical lines. It is a perfect frame that is suggesting the cyclical nature of this buck's experience. There is a repetitive pattern of animal behavior and animal rhythms. The repetition is forcing you to be in the loop with the buck. The buck is returning to the same state of solitary sleep, despite the interruption of desire. This structure is transforming this simple moment into something eternal and something recurring. I liked the language in this because it felt very strict, as opposed to summer, which felt very relaxed. The strictness of this form reflected the function of the poem. So we have the contrast between sleep and arousal. So the central tension lies in the movement from sleeps to stops and smells and then back to sleeps. This is a compressed narrative of a desire that is interrupted. It is perhaps a desire that cannot overcome this solitude that the buck has. The buck has physical responses, like the muscles twitching. It is suggesting involuntary arousal, but ultimately he returns to sleep and aloneness, suggesting this deeper need for solitude. There is a paradox of alone. The word alone frames the entire poem. It appears at the end of both the first and final stanzas, but the poem complicates this aloneness. The buck is alone, but it is surrounded by sensory evidence of potential companionship. The doe's presence is felt, even in her absence. This suggests that the solitude isn't necessarily isolation, and sometimes we are most aware of others when they are not physically present. I liked that energy, that the buck is alone, but it is so aware of the doe around him, the does around him. I think that this solitude, I think that it's a very positive idea, this positive feeling that we can have if we think about this, if we think about us as the buck. It is important to be alone sometimes because we can recenter ourselves, we can be mindful of ourselves, we can ground ourselves in the present, but it is also crucial and mandatory to not isolate ourselves. We are social creatures. We need people to be around us. We need to be around other people. We need to talk to people. We need to share things with people. We need to bake bread for people. We need to find people. We need to hug people. We need to empathize with that. We need to be around people. And I liked this energy of even when you're alone, you're not alone. And maybe that is something that we forget, especially when, I don't know, I think that these days we can get too isolated. And I think that this poem encourages us to continue to feel the positive energy of the people around us who love us, who want to help us, who want to talk to us. And I think that it encourages us to respond and to want to love and talk and support the people around us. I liked this poem. I liked this chapbook. I hope that you explore it. It is on our digital chapbooks link. It is called, I didn't even get to I'm sorry, there has to be one more. It'll be really quick. I did get to the title of the poem. All right, this is the title poem. It's called The Dance of the Emu, and then we'll call it a day, but it's so lovely. The Dance of the Emu. This is the beach, where jellyfish torn and twisted, with crab shells cracked and hollowed, with conches cracked and shattered, bright full moon, over sand dunes. The emu stands on rotting weeds, on shifting sands. The lick of a wave starts his craze, and so begins the dance, and so begins the trance that lasts for days and days and days. This is the dance of the emu that only few can see. This is the weird bird at midnight, dancing at the edge of the sea. I love that poem. It's delightful, and it's fun, and it adds beauty to the world, and it makes me smile, and I hope it makes you smile. There's a lot of very serious things in this world, and there's a lot of very serious things that we each experience. There is beauty in this world that allows us to feel joy. And I invite you to read this collection of poems to allow yourself to have beauty in your life for a moment, because joy is wonderful and you are allowed to feel joy. All right, party people, that is all for today. If you have enjoyed diving into the world of verse with us, please join us next time. We've got more poets to meet, more poems to explore, and more literary adventures to share. Until then, keep reading, keep writing, and keep poetry close to your heart. Thank you for joining POETICS Podcast, where we bring poetry to life, one verse at a time.